Welcome to 505 Main Street here in Wareham, Massachusetts. My name is Jeff Wyman. I'm here today with two special guests. We're going to start a series educating the public and citizens of Wareham kind of on municipal proceedings. And today we're going to start out talking about town meeting proceedings. And because town meeting is in 2 months, we have here today town moderator of town meeting, Margaret Ishihara, and a select board member. We have Mr. Alan Slavin. Welcome, both of you, to our studios here today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having us.
Excellent.
Thank you.
So we wanted to start out talking about the basics of town meeting and the warrant building process and how articles get on the warrant and the timing behind all of that. So talk to me a little bit about that procedure and how that starts and how it ends and kind of the process.
Who would you like to speak first?
Either one of you.
You want me to start?
So I think I will defer to Mr. Slavin on that, but
Great.
basically the process is that the warrant needs to get built before it gets to the point where the town moderator really is involved in the town meeting. There are certain budget deadlines and deadlines for people to submit warrant articles, and I think that Mr. Slavin can maybe speak more specifically to how that goes.
Please.
What we have normally would be, for, say, spring town meeting. Fall town meeting is in October, and then the time frame between the fall town meeting and the spring really is short because we have Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, and there's a whole block of time where things kind of go away and nobody thinks about stuff. So it's always, with the budgets and stuff, it's always a little difficult to get everything done on a time frame that we're required to. But basically what happens is the capital planning committee, which is supposed to list all the capital needs for the town and a 5-year plan to keep it constant 5 years, goes and speaks with all the different department heads to see what they need. They submit a list, and any projects that the town administrator might have. It's all put onto basically a spreadsheet, and the town administrator then looks at what they have, say, listed for 2025. Because your fiscal year starts like July 1st and ends June 30th. So even though it starts in 2024, it's really the 2025 budget, just so people understand that, because that's confusing of itself a lot of times. And they basically have that list. The town administrator will then pick what he feels the town either can afford or is the most important on the list for that year. Whatever doesn't get done that year just moves to the next year. The town administrator normally, depending on cash flow and stuff, will take what we call free cash, which means money that wasn't spent on the previous year, and try and do capital purchases at that time. Capital purchases would be any new vehicle, and I believe it's any item that's $25,000 or more, or $50,000 or more for any type of like building work, etc. So if you want to buy a TV, it's not a capital item. It goes into the person's regular budget for that department. So they basically are required to have a capital plan really done by the end of December, as of right now. The school committee is basically early January to have their budget submitted at the latest. It's really supposed to be like December 25th, which it's Christmas, so that doesn't matter, obviously. And it goes to the town administrator. The town administrator then takes that, works on his budget, and has to make a balanced budget, estimating revenues versus expenses. And then he, as of right now, on January 25th, has to basically give his budget to the finance committee. The Board of Selectmen have not seen the budget yet. Actually, they'll see it next week. Mr. Sullivan was short for time at this past Tuesday, or else he would have given it to us then. And the most important part is to get it to the finance committee, because this past Thursday, the finance committee then interviewed every department in town to have them explain what their budget requests were that Mr. Sullivan has listed and why the money's being used and how, salaries, etc. Then we have a time frame where articles can be submitted from the town departments. Usually, say, if it's a zoning article, it's submitted by the planning board, and it could be at the request of conservation, or it could be at the request of the ZBA, the Zoning Board of Appeals, or the Planning Board itself. Just for basic information, your planning board is in what we call a legislative branch of government. That's why they submit. The town administrator can submit articles. The Board of Selectmen can submit articles. You have departments like the CPA, which is Community Preservation Act, and you have the Community Preservation Committee. They have their own articles that they submit. They make the decision where it qualifies, say under the rules of the CPA, and they have so much money that they can spend every year. And if the request comes to them and it meets their requirements, then they write an article for a town meeting. And that's how that works there. So you have that. Then the last piece is what we call citizens petition articles, where a citizen might feel as though the town isn't doing what they think should be done, or basically when they want something done, they write an article, and it's usually for a standard citizen petition article. It will be 10 signatures, and they write it up. The only problem with a citizen's article is the person doing it has to really research how to do it. The town doesn't sit there and correct it for them. Town council is not available to them, etc. We cheat a little bit on that. If we see an article that's really bad, I know for myself, I'll tell someone, you need to go back and look at this, and you need to maybe have some legal advice, because you're going to put an article that's going to be defective.
Yeah,
Or you're going to have an article that can't be enforced or actually done. And the citizens petition article basically is the last one to be approved. They actually get an extra week from when we actually close the warrant. And then when I say close it, we close it as far as the departments, etc.
Yes, so that procedure is that the select board has to go through each article and actually vote recommendations for it.
Yeah, we used to actually at one time vote first about a month before as articles were coming in, whether to put them into the warrant or not. That's no longer we don't really do that anymore. Because as we've said a lot of times, my own personal opinion only is that I think the citizens of Wareham should have the right to vote on every article, and not the Board of Selectmen to make the decision for them, because then you really don't have a town meeting.
Right.
And that's how that kind of works. The citizens, like I say, the citizens petition articles will come at the end. They have like a Friday to send it, even though town hall's closed.
Great. So the warrant's built, town meeting is gathered, and the people are here. I wanted to touch on a little bit, Margaret, the role of the moderator. What's your job at town meeting once it's been assembled?
So let me just go back to
Okay.
just a point with regard to the scheduling of the town meeting. So Wareham, under its bylaws, actually has two regularly scheduled town meetings. One is the annual town meeting that we've been talking about, which typically the budget is a big item. It has to be on that. It's the fourth Monday of April. That's called for in the bylaws. There's also fall town meeting, which is the fourth Monday of October. And traditionally that's been all other business, because as Mr. Slavin pointed out, the fiscal year starts July 1st. So the annual town meeting, the budget gets voted, and then the fall town meeting might take up some things that have to do with other business related to the budget, zoning articles, that sort of thing. So the role of the moderator, as I view it, is to preside over the meeting, the opening and the closing of the meeting, to address and decide all questions of order. That's what the statute says. So my view of the role of the moderator also is to make sure, because we have open town meeting, all registered voters may attend, that people have a chance to a fair opportunity to state what their points of view are. But with respect to the other voters, they don't get to monopolize the meeting and be the only ones speaking. So I want people to feel that they had a chance to have their opinions be heard, and then have a chance for the voters to vote on whether they want the article or they do not want the article. So that's basically how I view the role of the town moderator. There are a couple of procedural things that we have here in Wareham. One is we have a so-called zero quorum, which means that it means what it sounds like. We're not required to have anyone there. I mean, you have to have the town clerk and myself there to open the meeting, to have a meeting. So that's one issue. The other is with regard to the procedure in the meeting. We have what's called a lottery system. Again, this is in the bylaws. So the articles will not come up in the order in which they're printed in the warrant. The town clerk will say, okay, Article 5 or whatever, and that's what gets taken up first until all the articles are taken care of or addressed. So that's how I view the role of the town moderator.
Great.
I think, wasn't the lottery voted out at the last town meeting?
No.
No.
No. No, it was not.
Okay, so I know there was...
I have a little bit of concerns about the lottery. I understood when it came in, the idea was to make sure that people did not, because you can get a sense if you've gone to town meeting, that if the article is the budget, it's probably going to come, it's typically in the warrant close to the front. So if you want to be there for the budget, you be there then. If you're not particularly interested in the budget and you're only interested in some other article later down the line, you might not appear at that first meeting. Or if there's something that a lot of voters are interested in, they show up and then they leave and then they're not there for the rest of the meeting. So that was the thinking behind it. From my point of view,
it was also a people quorum count.
Yeah, right. So it's not quite as orderly, perhaps, as it should be, but we make it work because we have to. So no, we still have it.
And also the selectmen are basically when the warrant is put together, if you didn't have this lottery, they could stack the articles the way they want, and you can kind of gerrymander how things work as well. And that's why it was put in that.
That's right.
I actually wrote that article for the lottery and also zero quorum.
Yeah.
That's
But
interesting.
we're trying to keep because what the rules are is if an article is more than $5,000 or more, it required 150 people, is what we had for our rules. So if you have 200 people, say, that show up for town meeting, and there's a major article, and 100 people get up and leave, if someone asks for a quorum count, and there's not 150 people, it means you can't pass your budget. But someone has to get up and ask for a quorum count. Once the meeting is open and there's a quorum, that's it. But if they leave and there's less than the quorum required back then, and nobody says anything, you just keep going.
Quorums, that's an interesting segue. I also wanted to touch on the different types of town meetings that different communities have around Massachusetts. So some towns and municipalities have an open town meeting, and some have like a representative town meeting. I wanted to hear both of your inputs on maybe some of the advantages and disadvantages of either system of government.
So I touched on this a little bit earlier, the open town meeting, which we have in Wareham. Anyone who's a registered voter can vote and speak or not speak if they choose to. Representative town meeting, I think there's different structures for that, but basically people vote for their representative to go to the town meeting on their behalf. And I think there's a mix of people voting for that representative kind of district or neighborhood wide and perhaps having at-large folks. So I lean towards favoring the open town meeting. I just like the idea that if you're a voter and a citizen, that you have the right to show up and speak your piece, so to speak. There is a point, I think, where a community gets so large that maybe that just becomes somewhat unwieldy.
Yeah, you might end up with a town meeting that lasts 5 or 6 days. I've heard some real, I wouldn't say horror stories, but coming from Falmouth, we typically have like a 2 or 3 night town meeting, but we work with people who have done some production of town meetings in the communities that they're lasting like 5, 6 nights, probably because they're having 500, 600, 700 people showing up at one time. that I can see would be very unwieldy. So we're about 15 minutes into this program here. Is there anything else in your notes, Margaret, that you wanted to touch on?
Do you want me to contribute on the
representative
Yeah.
versus open?
Absolutely.
Okay. We had back around 2009, 2010, a charter review committee that I chaired, and the 9 members, the majority of them decided almost at the beginning they wanted a mayor and town council, which was soundly defeated. But I did originally hope that we would consider a representative town meeting. Again, because we're having issues with quorum, etc. And Plymouth, which is our neighbor, has had town meeting with the representatives set up for a long time. They've actually, I believe, 11 or 12 times now tried to change the form of government to a mayor, town council, and it's been soundly defeated every time. The only complaint I ever heard was that you basically vote for someone who is in your district or precinct, depending how it's set up. And there's also a few members that are at large, which means everyone in town votes for the at large instead of just that little group. The one advantage of that is that you have someone you can go to and yell and scream at or whatever and tell them what you want, and that person is supposed to go and represent you. I'm not sure how well that really works. So, but that's what they've done, and that's a town that has 60,000 plus people and is being very stubborn, not changing. In Wareham, in the real world, the type of town meeting we have is probably the truest form of government there is. The citizens really tell everybody, in administration how they want the place run and what they want done, where they want the money spent, etc. Once you basically lose that, you really lose control of what happens. And I'm not going to say our federal government is that happened, but it's really the same thing. You're voting for someone to represent you, hoping that when they get where they have to be, they really represent you.
Great. We got a few more minutes here. And Alan, you're such a great storyteller, and you've been on the board for a while, and your term is coming up, and it doesn't sound like you're going to be running again. So I wanted to give you the opportunity for a few minutes to talk about your tenure on the board and maybe one or two of the largest issues that you've been involved with in Wareham.
Well, I believe in term limits. I'm 4 terms now. I think you get complacent and you get a little flat and stuff. And it's just, you really have to sit there and say, well, it really should be time. You should let someone else come in and who has probably more energy than you at that point and probably is not as disappointed how hard things are to happen. The biggest problem you have as a selectman, you're 1 of 5. So you always have to build a rapport to build at least a majority. So if you want to have something come up and be voted on, etc., hopefully pass, you have to have at least 3, sometimes 4 out of 5. It's been an interesting run. There are times that I've agreed with fellow members. There are times when I had a serious issue with some of my members. But I've always basically done what I felt was right for the town. As the article in the newspaper was by my grandmother way back while she was not well. Actually, she was dying. She basically told me that I had to, when I get done with my commercial life, that I had to give back to the community. And I think she used the word shall, not will, use shall. And I remember that, and as the newspaper says, I went to a first town meeting with Sandy. She was on one of the committees. And the finance committee had their own budget different than the town administrator. And I remember I think all but one person got up on the finance committee and walked out because they weren't getting what they wanted.
Wow.
I looked at Sandy and I said, they can't do that. That's not right. So unfortunately, she looked at me and said, if you don't like it, do something about it. So that's when I started to get on different boards and committees. I think I got up to it's really too much. I was on 7 boards and committees. I chaired a I was clerk on a bunch of different ones. And I was asked to run for selectman, and they kept after me, and I finally said, okay. I really had enjoyed being on the boards. I really did not initially want to be a selectman. It wasn't in my ballpark. There's a lot of things like, we talk about, zero quorum with lottery. There's a lot of articles that I basically helped write or wrote. There's a lot of things that happen in town, and once you do something, you kind of forget about it, unless you have a ridiculous ego that you want to tell everybody, I did this, I did that. I think the only thing left, really, one of the things is the Cape Verdean Cultural Center. We were able to get the Oak Grove School back where I thought it really should be. It took 7 years, and they now lease that building, so they'll have their museum, etc. there. I think my biggest disappointment really is the Cape Flyer comes down through Wareham into Buzzards Bay and over to Hyannis. It's 60-mile-an-hour certified, so I've been pushing for commuter rail for quite a while. I think it's be a huge economic benefit for the town of Wareham. I'm not getting a lot of support. Tom Gahere, who takes care of the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority, and I, we talk off and on, and we're trying to get this done, but only from Middleborough, the new station, down to Buzzards Bay. But the MBTA is having hard times, so I'm not sure we're going to get it or not. But I've probably been trying for that for 10 years. But it's not as bad as South Coast Rail, which is 38 years.
So I think I beat you on the 10 years. I think I was the MBTA designated rep to the advisory board.
Yeah, that's what I am
pushing for the commuter rail. I think that, I know this is a bit off topic,
That's
but with the commuter rail going down to New Bedford and then the spur over to Fall River, I think the view may be, and I'm not sure, that takes care of the South Coast. I never thought the New Bedford would happen.
Yeah, well, nobody
Frankly, no one didn't. All of a sudden it's happening.
Yeah, so what it is they're putting a new station in Middleborough, right off near 105 there. And there's actually two lines, there's not spurs. There's a line from Fall River, completely separate, and a line from New Bedford, and they come up and they continue into Boston. Someone, I'm not going to say who, told me that once they're up and running, that there's a reasonable chance that they'll go ahead and pull the trigger on from Middleborough to Wareham and Buzzards Bay. The only reason we have the Cape Flyer is when I heard it was coming, I called Tom and I said, is there a possibility that we could have a stop in Wareham? He thought about it, he lobbied for it. That's how we got the station. Because we didn't build it, the MBTA came down and built it. And that's how that really happened. I'm trying to think what else is. I think probably the other thing is we have a lot of citizens that go from Wareham because they're at Toby or whatever. They go to St. Luke's or Charlton, which is one of the major heart hospital centers in the state at this point. They're rated way up there for bypass surgery, etc. And there was no transportation to go from west to east. I mean, there was nothing. You had to get a taxi cab or try and make some arrangements. So we have GATRA, which is our local regional, which replaces the MBTA service technically here. I think Rochester and Marion have no service like that. And then Mattapoisett going west, they have CERTA, which is Fall River, New Bedford. So you have two separate transportation entities, separate unions, etc. So it just never was considered. So Frank Gay, who is the executive director of GATRA, basically lives in Wareham. And I used to go to the meetings, so I was on the GATRA board. And I would always say, we really need something from east to west, basically. It's the best way to put it. And Frank sat down and we worked through SERPED, etc., which is a regional planning organization. And we were able to get a bus service, which continues today, from here all the way down to New Bedford. And from New Bedford, you get a bus that goes the Fall River. So if someone doesn't have a car, can't drive, there is transportation available. And I think that was one of the, for me anyways, I thought that was one of the best things that we actually able to do. Because you have two unions working together. One of the bus lines supplies the bus, which is the CERTA line. And, you know, you're breaking barriers. This does not exist anywhere else in the state of Massachusetts. And I was pretty happy with that. And I was happy because Frank helped me on that one.
That's great. Well, I want to thank you both for coming to WCTV's 505 Main studio here. And next time, we'll get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of town meeting, maybe discuss the complicated issue of motions and try to educate the Wareham public a little bit about how that operates. So thank you, Select Board Member Alan Slavin, for joining us here. And thank you, town meeting moderator Margaret Ishihara.
Thank you.
And again, I am Jeff Wyman with Wareham Community Television. We're here at 505 Main Street. We are open Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Anyone who's watching us, please come in and join us and see our studio. Ask questions, take classes. We are open and we are here for you. And we will see you next time. Thank you.